Ever wondered how Amish families achieve complete financial freedom while 77% of Americans struggle with debt? It's not higher incomes. Amish families earn far less, yet live entirely debt-free. The difference lies in structural life design, making debt physically impossible. These 10 barriers create debt-proof existence modern traps cannot penetrate. Never borrow. The foundation of Amish financial immunity begins with an absolute religious and cultural prohibition against all forms of borrowing. This isn't advice or a strong preference. It's a non-negotiable rule enforced through community accountability that makes debt functionally impossible, regardless of circumstances or temptation. The Amish interpret biblical passages about debt literally, viewing borrowing as spiritual compromise that creates bondage to lenders. Church teachings emphasize that debt violates the principle of contentment and demonstrates lack of faith in God's provision. These religious convictions create cultural pressure where taking on debt brings shame and community disapproval that few are willing to face. The practical implementation is straightforward. Every transaction happens in cash or check, representing funds already possessed. No credit cards exist in Amish wallets. No loan applications are submitted to banks. No financing agreements are signed at stores. If funds aren't available for a purchase, the purchase simply doesn't happen until savings accumulate. This absolute stance eliminates the gradual compromises that trap modern families. There's no just this once credit card use that becomes habitual, no small loan that establishes borrowing as acceptable. The boundary is clear, enforced, and maintained across entire lifetimes. Build homes. Home ownership represents the largest debt burden most Americans face. 30-year mortgages consuming 25-35% of monthly income and costing 2 to 3 times the home's purchase price through interest payments. Amish families eliminate this entire debt category through patient construction strategies that would seem impossible to modern homebuyers. Young Amish couples save for years before beginning home construction, accumulating $20,000 to $40,000 through their work, income, and wedding gift money. When savings reach sufficient levels, construction begins not on a complete home, but on the foundation and basic structure that can be expanded over time as additional funds become available. The initial building might be a simple 2-room structure enough to establish independent household, but far from complete. Over subsequent years, rooms are added, interior finishing happens, and amenities are installed as the family's savings allow. They might live in a partially completed home for 5 years or more, gradually improving it without ever borrowing a dollar. Community labor reduces costs dramatically. Barn raisings and house framings happen through collective work, where dozens of men donate labor with the understanding that they'll receive reciprocal help when their families need it. This mutual aid transforms what would be $150,000, $200,000 contractor costs into $50,000, $80,000 in materials and supplies. The result is homeownership achieved typically by age 30 to 35 without any mortgage debt, complete financial freedom and housing that most Americans never experience. Buying with cash. Transportation debt traps millions of American families in perpetual car payments averaging $500, $700 monthly that continue for 6 to 7 years per vehicle, then restart with the next purchase. Amish families sidestep this entire debt category through transportation choices that require one-time purchases rather than financed obligations. A quality open buggy suitable for warm weather costs $3,000 to $5,000 and lasts 20 to 30 years with proper maintenance. An enclosed buggy providing year-round comfort runs $8,000 to $12,000, but similarly serves decades. A trained driving horse costs $1,500 to $3,000 and works reliably for 10 to 15 years. These purchases happen with saved cash. Amish buyers never finance buggies or horses through loans. The lifetime transportation cost comparison is staggering. An Amish family's complete transportation expenses over 40 years, including multiple buggies, several horses, feed, veterinary care, and equipment, total approximately $30,000 to $50,000. The average American spends $9,000 to $12,000 annually on vehicle payments, insurance, fuel, and maintenance. reaching $360,000 to $480,000 over the same period. Beyond the massive cost difference, the Amish approach eliminates the debt trap that catches families who cannot afford the monthly payment but convince themselves they need the vehicle, then struggle for years under the financial burden while their vehicle depreciates and eventually requires replacement through another financed purchase. The simple transportation choice, horse and buggy bought with cash, prevents this entire debt cycle from ever beginning. No consumerism, credit cards, store financing, and buy now, pay later schemes that trap modern consumers in high interest debt cycles find no foothold in Amish communities where cultural and religious barriers prevent consumer credit use, regardless of convenience or reward programs that entice mainstream Americans. When an Amish family needs furniture, appliances, or household items, they save until funds accumulate for cash purchase. This might mean waiting months or years for major items, using second-hand alternatives temporarily, or doing without until savings goals are reached. The inconvenience and delayed gratification are accepted as preferable to the bondage of debt payments. Store credit offers that seem financially attractive to modern consumers, no interest for 12 months, or low monthly payments, are rejected automatically because the underlying debt relationship violates religious principles, regardless of interest rates or terms. Even zero-interest financing constitutes borrowing, making it unacceptable. This discipline eliminates impulse purchases that credit cards enable. When you must pay cash immediately, the psychological barrier to purchasing is significantly higher than swiping a card and worrying about payment later. Amish shoppers carefully consider whether they truly need items and whether the purchase represents good stewardship of limited resources. The community accountability adds enforcement. Other Amish people notice what families purchase and how they pay. Using credit would become community knowledge, bringing questions about spiritual commitment and setting poor examples for younger families. This social pressure reinforces the individual discipline that prevents consumer debt. The result is Amish families who own everything they possess, no credit card balances growing through compound interest, no furniture payments extending for years, no appliances owned by finance companies until final payments clear. Education without loans. Student loan debt, averaging $30,000 to $100,000 plus per person, represents one of modern America's most crippling debt traps, creating financial burdens that follow borrowers for decades and delay homeownership, marriage, and family formation. Amish families completely avoid this category through educational choices that eliminate college and the debt it requires. Amish formal education ends at 8th grade, following religious exemptions that keep children in community-operated schools rather than public high schools. This limited formal education might seem restrictive by modern standards, but it eliminates any possibility of student loan debt while providing sufficient academic foundation for the trades and farming that constitute Amish livelihoods. Skill development happens through apprenticeship rather than classroom instruction. A 14-year-old boy learning carpentry works alongside his father or uncle for years, developing genuine expertise through thousands of hours of practice. A teenage girl masters quilting, cooking, and household management through her mother's direct teaching. These apprenticeships cost nothing, no tuition, no fees, no debt. The economic implications are profound. While American teenagers finish high school and often continue to 4 or 6 years of college, accumulating debt the entire time, Amish youth begin full-time work at 14 or 15, earning income and building savings. By age 22, when their American counterparts graduate college with $50,000 in debt, Amish young adults have accumulated $40,000 to $60,000 in savings. This 8-year head start on wealth building, earning, and saving versus borrowing and spending creates financial trajectories that diverge dramatically over lifetimes. The Amish youth enters adulthood with capital to establish a household, while the college graduate enters with debt that delays all major life milestones. The educational choice isn't about anti-intellectualism, it's about prioritizing practical skills over credentials and avoiding the debt trap that college has become for millions of Americans whose degrees don't generate income sufficient to justify the borrowing. Sharing costs. One of the most powerful debt prevention mechanisms in Amish life operates through community cost sharing that distributes financial burdens across many families rather than allowing single households to bear crushing expenses that force borrowing. This mutual aid system prevents the crisis debt that destroys modern families facing unexpected major expenses. Medical costs, often the trigger for bankruptcy, even among insured American families, are managed through community medical funds, where monthly contributions from all families create pools that cover major expenses. When a family faces a $75,000 hospital bill from a serious accident or illness, the community fund covers it through collective resources rather than forcing that family into bankruptcy or debt. Major construction projects happen through barn raisings and house framings where the entire community provides free labor. A project that would cost $50,000 to $80,000 in contractor fees happens for the cost of materials alone, perhaps $15,000 to $25,000 because dozens of men donate their work with the understanding that they'll receive the same help when needed. Equipment sharing prevents redundant purchases. Expensive items used occasionally, specialized farming implements, tools, or machinery are owned by one family but borrowed by others, eliminating the need for multiple families to purchase identical items they'll use infrequently. Emergency assistance flows automatically when families face disasters. House fires, medical crises, or income loss trigger immediate community response, providing temporary housing, delivering meals, offering financial gifts that prevent affected families from resorting to loans to survive difficult periods. This shared cost system creates financial resilience impossible in individualistic modern society, where families face all expenses alone and must borrow when costs exceed their capacity. Marrying only ready ones. Marriage timing in Amish communities includes mandatory financial readiness verification that prevents young couples from starting married life in debt, a common pattern among modern Americans who marry first and worry about financial foundation later, often resulting in financial stress that strains or destroys the marriage. Before an Amish young man can receive permission to marry, his potential father-in-law conducts financial interrogation, assessing savings, income sources, and housing plans. The expectation varies by community, but typically requires $5,000 to $15,000 in accumulated savings, plus clear plans for establishing a household. Young men who cannot demonstrate financial readiness are told to wait until they've built sufficient resources. This requirement forces financial discipline during the years between age 16 and marriage and early to mid-20s. Young Amish men know they must save aggressively to achieve marriage eligibility, creating motivation for frugality and work ethic during the critical wealth-building years. They cannot hide poor financial habits because the father's verification requires showing actual savings and assets. The system prevents couples from entering marriage with debt or without resources to handle normal expenses and unexpected costs. They begin married life with financial foundation rather than financial stress, eliminating money conflict that research shows is among the top marriage stress factors. Modern couples who marry without savings, with student loan debt, or with poor financial habits face immediate financial pressure that Amish couples avoid through the enforced readiness requirement. The marriage timing discipline prevents starting debt that haunts many American couples for decades. Proper budgeting. Amish families average 6 to 8 children family sizes that would financially devastate most modern Americans, who calculate the $250,000 to $300,000 cost per child and conclude large families are economically impossible. Yet Amish families raise numerous children without debt through economic structures that make children assets rather than financial drains. Children begin contributing labor value far earlier than modern American children. By age 8 to 10, Amish children perform meaningful farm and household work that reduces parents' workload and contributes to family productivity. Teenage children work nearly adult hours, generating substantial family economic value that offsets their consumption. The hand-me-down economy eliminates the per-child cost multiplication that bankrupts modern families. Clothing passes through multiple children. Furniture serves consecutive siblings. Toys and books cycle through the family. The first child might require significant initial investment, but subsequent children use the same resources with minimal additional expense. Home food